Hey, this is Andreas, and I'm the founder of mindbodyconnection.org. We help high-performing professionals get out of chronic pain by using clinical hypnotherapy and neural circuits retraining. In this video, I want to discuss with you the topic of neuroplastic pain. What is it? What are the characteristics of it? And how does it differ from regular chronic pain? But before we jump in, we need to understand some of the challenges and issues that arise for most people with chronic pain. You see, the challenge that most people with chronic pain encounter is that they're not always understood. And that can be by their family, by their friends, by their coworkers, employers, but even their doctor. They can go to their doctor and say that they are in pain, and they will run all the tests, take all the scans, but the feedback they will get is that we can't find anything wrong. We can't explain what it is that is causing your pain. So they might, they get the message that you'll just have to cope with it. And perhaps they'll be offered physiotherapy, medications, or even injections or surgery. But despite doing all of those things, a lot of people find that their pain keeps coming back. And why is that? Well, in recent years, we have found an explanation for this. And this is where neuroplastic pain comes in. So neuroplastic pain. Neuroplastic comes from the same word that describes how your brain is able to learn and change. Neuroplasticity. So neuroplastic pain means that the brain has learned to generate pain, even when there's no physical injury or disease that is causing it. But how is that possible? Well, you need to know that all pain is generated in the brain. So if you cut your finger, it's not actually the nerves in the finger that produces the pain. It is always the brain. But the nerves, if you cut your finger, it will send a signal into your spinal cord and up to your brain. And the brain will interpret, is this important? Is this dangerous? And when it has decided, it will produce pain to alert you that you are in fact injured in your finger. So pain is the brain's way of protecting you. It's simply a protection mechanism to keep you safe. So the brain is always on guard as a danger sensor alarm mechanism looking to keep you safe. But it has to prioritize and interpret the signals it gets. And I want you to imagine being out for a run. And while on the run, you roll your ankle. And immediately that ankle will start hurting. And that is your brain sensing that there's been an injury in the ankle, and it knows that if you keep running on your ankle, it will get more injured and you'll potentially hurt yourself really, really bad. So that's why it produces pain to stop you from running and to make sure that you rest and recover so that your body can heal. But now imagine that you're not only out for a nice leisurely jog. You're actually being chased by something. You're running for your life, okay? So imagine a lion chasing you down the street. And now, if you roll your ankle while being chased by a lion, that ankle is not going to hurt because the brain, it prioritizes. And a rolled ankle, running on a rolled ankle, it's not that important if the alternative is getting killed and eaten by a lion. So you see, the brain will prioritize and it will interpret the pain signals it gets from the body. And the reason I'm telling you all of this is so that you understand that all kinds of pain is being generated by the brain. And that helps us understand why the brain can generate pain even though there's no physical reason like an injury or a disease. This is simply the brain getting it wrong sometimes and producing pain even though there doesn't have to be any to keep you safe. So when the brain gets it wrong and it sends pain signals even when there's no physical reason for it, this is called neuroplastic pain. And we also know that emotional pain, it activates the same areas in the brain as physical pain does. And this is how emotional pain can produce physical pain. So you can think of your brain's danger detection mechanism as a fire alarm. If there's a big fire, and in this analogy, that's you being injured or having a disease, it's a big fire, the fire alarm, the pain, it goes off to let you know that something is wrong that needs your attention. But sometimes, maybe you're just making some toasts and it burns and the fire alarm goes off, and even though everything is fine, the fire alarm is just blaring. And in this analogy, you making toast, that's you being stressed out. It's you being worried or fearful about something. Like there's a problem in your life. So even though that's not so dangerous that it will actually hurt your body, the brain might misinterpret the emotional signals coming from that fear or that stress or that worry and decide to start producing pain. And one unfortunate mechanism with this, as the classic neuroscientist saying says, neurons that fire together wire together. And that means that for every time this fire alarm goes off, every time it does so, it becomes easier to do it next time. And that means that every time your brain misinterprets a danger signal and decides to create pain, every time it does that, it makes it easier to do so the next time. So that makes the brain essentially better at producing pain, and it makes it more sensitized. And we call this central sensitization. Okay, so what does all of this actually mean for you? Well, it means that you don't need to have a physical injury or a disease to have chronic pain. You see, for most of us, we assume that pain equals an injury or it equals a disease. And we also assume that more pain equals more damage to the body. And as we now know, that's simply not the truth. There was a huge literature review done where they looked at studies that looked at the backs of people throughout all age groups, from 20 up to 80 years old. And what they found was that in 20-year-olds, 37% had some kind of degenerative changes in their backs. And this very steadily increased throughout the age groups up to the 80-year-old age group, where 96% had degenerative changes in their backs. But here's the interesting part. None of the people in the literature review or in any of the studies had any pain at all. So that clearly indicates that there's not always the case that degenerative changes in the body equals pain. And that also means that even though you have pain, that does not necessarily equal a physical injury or a disease in the body. And of course, this is also true for functional conditions like irritable bowel syndrome or fibromyalgia. These are functional conditions, meaning that we don't really have a physical explanation for them in that sense. There's nothing physically wrong in the body. And it seems that these neural circuits that create neuroplastic pain also plays a big part in IBS and fibromyalgia. And just to make this abundantly clear, none of this means that the pain you're experiencing is not real. It does not mean that it is exaggerated or that it's not there or any of that. It is absolutely real. All pain you experience is real. It simply means that it's not necessarily physical damage. And that should be good news. That's a good thing because neural circuits in the brain can be changed and retrained. That's also why we call it neuroplastic pain. Neuroplasticity means that the brain is able to change. And if it has learned to produce pain, it can learn to reduce pain or even eliminate it. Okay, so how do you know if your pain is neuroplastic? We do have a framework that you can use to check this out, and it's called the FIT framework. It's a mnemonic. It's FIT, meaning functional, inconsistent, and triggers. So functional, meaning that it is no physical reason for it necessarily. So this is if you have pain and you do the scans, you do the tests, and there's no clear explanation. So inconsistent means that the pain can change in a way that normal physical injury wouldn't. So if you happen to tear your rotator cuff or get an injury in your shoulder, then that pain wouldn't suddenly show up in your right shoulder, for example, or it wouldn't show up in your back. But neuroplastic pain has this characteristic that it might change where you feel it and how you feel it. Another characteristic for inconsistency is that it might come and go depending on your circumstances or your plans, your schedule, right? So if your pain goes away when you go on vacation or you are in a certain environment, or perhaps it flares up when you are expecting stress or you are getting in your car on your way to the dentist every time or to the doctors or maybe even to work. So that is another key characteristic of inconsistency. Finally, we have triggers. And this is kind of like what we discussed in inconsistency. If it's triggered by certain situations or by, it could be random stimuli like the weather. It could be when you are in your kitchen or your bathroom, like different kinds of triggers. It could be when you see a certain person or when you are at a certain location. It could be at a certain date or a certain time of day. A lot of people experience symptoms when it's an anniversary of a negative event, like the loss of a loved one or anything like that. So that is triggers. So this is the FIT framework summed up: functional, inconsistent, and triggered. So if you have chronic pain and you suspect that it might be neuroplastic, we have created an assessment for you that you can take, and it will help you get an indication as to whether or not your pain is neuroplastic. So make sure you check that out. Okay, so how can we treat neuroplastic pain? What can we do about this? Well, what you need to know is that neuroplastic pain is fueled by a negative feedback loop, a vicious cycle, if you will. And we call this the pain-fear cycle. And what tends to happen is that pain occurs in the body And when we notice it, we get fearful, we get worried, and we get anxious. Because we're worried about, what is this pain? Am I having a disease, or have I injured myself? Am I going to be okay? Like, what's going on? These sensations make us very stressed. Of course they do. And what happens is that this stress makes the brain even more sensitive to these danger signals. So when we are afraid, that tells the brain that this is actually dangerous. So this creates a loop where we feel pain and we get fearful and anxious. And this fear and anxiety, it sensitizes the brain, creating even more pain. And that's the pain-fear cycle. So to treat neuroplastic pain, we need to break this cycle. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. But there are basically two strategies we use to break the cycle. And the first is changing the brain's belief about what is safe and what is dangerous. So we have to unlearn the danger mechanism in the brain, the neural circuits that control the pain. So we work with the brain to change that belief from this is dangerous and something is very wrong and this is not okay, to the brain feeling that I'm safe and I'm okay. This is going to be okay. So that's the one thing. And the second thing is that for many, recovery also involves expressing and gaining awareness of these emotions that have contributed to creating the pain in the first place. You see, as we discussed earlier in the video, emotional pain and physical pain activate the same parts in the brain, the same brain areas. So for a lot of people, having suppressed or repressed emotions can help fire up these pain signals in the brain. So these are the two main strategies we use for reducing or eliminating neuroplastic pain. It's changing the belief in the brain from danger to safety. And it is emotional awareness and emotional expression to help relieve that emotional pressure that creates the pain in the first place. If you have chronic pain and you have not been able to find any sort of reason or cause for it, I just want to assure you that you are not broken. You simply have a human brain. And a lot of people throughout their lives will encounter having neuroplastic pain. It's simply a very normal human thing to experience. And just as your brain has learned to produce this pain, it can learn to reduce or eliminate it. This is neuroplasticity. And previously, we used to believe that neuroplasticity was only a thing in children. And this is why children pick up new languages and new skills so quickly. But now we actually know that the brain is neuroplastic throughout the human lifespan. So the brain can change no matter how old you are, no matter how long you've had pain. So I really hope that this new insights and this knowledge really creates hope for you, that you can see a way now to take back control over your life. So if the characteristics of neuroplastic pain sound familiar, I invite you to take the next step and sign up for our waiting list. When you're on the list, we will reach out when a slot opens and invite you to a free personal assessment call. And on the call, we will look into your history, your pain, and your symptoms, and we will figure out if our program could be the right fit for you. You can also take the assessment questionnaire. which will help you get an indication as to whether or not your pain is neuroplastic. You can find links to both in the description below. And that's everything from me today. Wishing you health and happiness, and I'll see you in the next video.